Hey, in this video, we're going to talk about the things you need to know in order to get around in Puerto Rico. Hey, if you're new to this channel, I'm Joel.
And I'm Michelle, and we are the Wandering Hartz. We're a couple of nomads who sold everything we own to travel full-time.
That's right. And so on this channel, we're sharing our experiences, our travels, advice, even reviews and tips in order to help you with your own travel journey. Subscribe to follow along if you like information like this, and give us a like if this video ends up helping you. It definitely helps us know what kind of stuff to make for you guys. All right, so now let's get into it. So this video is all about getting around in Puerto Rico. So if you didn't know much about Puerto Rico already, it's an island in the Caribbean, and it's one of the U.S. territories. It's actually about 90 miles by 30, which is actually pretty much the same size as the big island of Hawaii. The difference is that it takes a long time to get around the island. Driving in a car, it takes you about 8 hours to circumnavigate, and that's assuming you don't stop to enjoy the beaches or any of the great food along the way.
Okay, so first off, do you need a car to get around Puerto Rico?
So that's a really good question, and it kind of depends really where you're staying. If you're going to be staying in the San Juan metro area, like Old San Juan or Coronado or somewhere around there, then the answer is you probably don't, because there's a lot of public transportation in the area, buses, there's even a metro subway. Additionally, you can find Ubers and taxis pretty easy in that area.
If you're staying outside of the San Juan metro area and planning to explore the island, you will probably need a car. Ubers are limited outside of the metro area, and as well as taxis. So for example, if you take a taxi from San Juan to Fajardo, where we were staying at on the east side of the island, it would run you about $100.
So the one exception to that would be that some tour operators might actually offer a shuttle service from the San Juan metro area out to somewhere like Fajardo or another place where you're going to be doing maybe a snorkel tour or something like that. So definitely want to check with the tour operators on that. A lot of times they will meet just at certain hotels only though. So there's essentially no inner city transportation available in Puerto Rico. There are things called publicos, which are basically like white vans that just kind of travel from city to city, but they haven't really been in operation in the last year due to the social distancing restrictions based on the pandemic that we've been dealing with.
There are ferries that will take you out to the islands of Culebra and Vieques, but generally most of the car rental companies don't want you to take your rental off of the main island.
Air travel is also available on the island through companies like JetBlue, Vieques Airlink, Air Flamingo, and I'm probably missing something else. But those will take you to Culebra, Vieques, as well as other municipal airports on the island itself. So what's driving like in Puerto Rico?
Yep. So to drive a car or a scooter in Puerto Rico, you do need a valid driver's license. So any U.S. Driver's license will work. And you also will need to have liability insurance.
That's right. And so also rules of the road are basically the same as the U.S. mainland. Drive on the right. You got a free right turn unless otherwise posted. And you want to slow down for those school zones as well. And if you're riding a motorcycle or a bicycle, you got to make sure you wear a helmet. If you're in a car, you're wearing your seatbelt.
Renting a car in Puerto Rico. So what do we need to know?
Okay, so renting a car in Puerto Rico is actually pretty easy. Pretty much all major U.S. auto rental car companies are there on the island. And you can find the bulk of them in the San Juan area. That's also where you're going to find probably your best prices because there's more competition there. You can find other rental companies, or rental car companies rather, like all throughout the island, like even in Fajardo or Rincon or just other areas like that. But generally they cater more towards kind of like adventure stuff, like off-roading, Jeeps, 4x4s and things. And they're going to be a little bit pricier too because you're so far removed from the main area. So pre-pandemic, you could rent a car out of San Juan for about $20 a day before taxes and fees, or just under $200 a week. But as of 2021, those prices have basically tripled. So I just did a lookup just yesterday, actually, at the time of this video, and it's looking at $600 a week for just an economy car. So just be aware of that. The main reason for this is because last year in 2020 with the pandemic, a lot of car rental companies essentially basically slashed their inventories in order to save money. And it just simply hasn't caught up yet to the travel demand. Hopefully, as travel demand continues to increase, they will also be able to restock their inventories and those prices will kind of come back to something reasonable. All right, so what do you need to know in order to rent a car in Puerto Rico?
Yep. So renting a car in Puerto Rico is pretty easy. You just need a valid U.S. driver's license, and you will also need liability coverage from your auto insurance carrier. And most of U.S. auto insurance will cover you in the states, territories like Puerto Rico, and also Canada and Mexico.
So you definitely want to verify this with your insurance company, as some car rental companies might actually require you to have proof of your insurance, whether that be an actual copy of your policy. So definitely bring that along, or they could even ask for a letter from your insurance provider saying that you are covered in Puerto Rico. So I would ask your insurance company and have that just as a backup in case, so that you can present that when you go to rent your car. This section's hard, so I'm going to have to read a little bit. So the car rental company will offer insurance against damage to the car called collision damage, or sometimes called loss damage. They might refer to it as a CDW or a LDW, the collision damage or a loss damage waiver. All right, so this is optional. You definitely don't have to get this, as you may already be covered through your regular auto insurance, just if you have a full coverage, or even through your credit card that you use to basically book it and also pay for your car rental. So you definitely want to check with your credit card company about this, as you may also need to have a letter from them stating the same thing, that you already have collision damage waiver, that's coverage, it's as part of your policy, and that way you can get around that. If you don't have that, I definitely recommend having something like that. And also, if you're going to do a very long-term stay, you want to check with your credit card company too, because generally they don't let you rent for more than 28 to 30 days on the same rental period in order to keep that coverage. So either way, you can expect to see between a $100 and $500 hold put on your credit card as kind of a damage waiver, just in case, until you get back and they can assess that there is no damage.
Okay, so what do we need to know about the toll roads in Puerto Rico?
That's a very good question. So first off, there are toll roads on 3/4 of the island. You can actually avoid the roads completely. It will definitely add more time to your commute, though, wherever you're going. But if you do want to use the toll roads, you want to check with your rental car company and have them add that on. So generally what they'll do is they'll add it on, and it'll basically enable you to use the pass, kind of like an easy pass. It's called an Auto Expresso, and that's going to be in your car rental already. It's right above the mirror. So you'll want to go ahead and work on that ahead of time. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you end up going through a toll, and if you didn't pay for it, then they're going to charge you a fee for every time you go through, plus the fee of the toll on top of that. So just be on the lookout for that. Now, for our rental, we used Sixt. I think they charged $10 a day in order for you to access the tolls. So the reason this is because you can't actually use the cash booths on the expressos. You used to be able to, but they don't let rental cars use those anymore. And mostly it's because they're kind of doing away with it as an island. They're going completely electronic. And so that's just one of the first steps they've taken there. So you definitely want to make sure that if you plan on it, get it through your rental car company. Like I said, ours was about $10 a day, and that covered all of the tolls, however many we went on, for every day. Now, they did give us a break I think we got a break of think it was down to $7 a day if we booked for 10 days straight. And then I think it was free beyond that. So like if you're going to book for, at least through Sixt it was, if you were going to rent for 2 weeks, then you're paying basically like $100 or whatever, and you're covered beyond that for the rest of the time. You don't have to worry about it. What can you tell me about the roads and what kind of hazards you have to look for?
Yeah, so the roads in Puerto Rico are going to be a little bit different than probably what you are used to from driving on the mainland in the United States. You will need to watch out for potholes, uneven, bumpy roads, dirt roads, uneven surfaces, missing speed limit signs, busted railings, horses, yes, horses, iguanas, there's lots of them there, and bicyclists, and just randomly stopped cars.
So let's reiterate that one more time. The two big ones that you have to watch out for especially if you're having a rental car, mainly potholes and these like crazy bumpy dirt roads that you'll find that lead to, of course, all of the wonderful, cool beaches that you want to go to. There are some major ruts that you can go over. And this is what gets people all the time. You hear these horror stories. If you go on TripAdvisor or any of these other places, you're going to read horror stories where people are like, yeah, the rental car company, they try to charge me all this money for all this damage. There's no damage to the car. Well, that's what they're finding is under the damage under the vehicle, or the wheels like getting bent and torqued and stuff like that from like these potholes and stuff like that. Because people just don't realize that you have to go really slow on some of those like crazy dirt roads and stuff like that. So be aware of that. And this is another reason why you want to make sure you have that collision damage waiver, either through your credit card or through your own insurance, because that's going to save your bacon if it comes down to you're returning your car and they find a bunch of damage. In that case, you may only be out just your deposit.
As we mentioned before, yes, there are horses, lots of horses on Puerto Rico, and it's perfectly legal to ride your horse on the road, just exception for, I think, a few small municipalities. So just make sure that you look out for that when you are driving, mostly in the evening or at dusk, when people are probably going back to their houses. So yeah, a lot of them they're not wearing any kind of reflective or, safety gear. So just make sure that you kind of look out for them on the road.
Also, another thing to think about is all of the speed limit signs are going to be in miles per hour, but all your distances are in kilometers. So that can kind of throw some people off a little bit. Another thing about the roads, most of these roads, except for the big express lanes, will actually narrow quite a bit. So you might be on this 3-lane road, and then next thing you know, you get outside of a big city area and it's down to like 1 lane, or not even 1 lane, So, and a lot of times they don't have lines on the roads. There won't be white lines on the sides, and there won't be a yellow line down the middle. So you just definitely watch out for that. It can kind of sneak up on you, and with that, you notice that a lot of locals will people just kind of drive down the middle of the road, and then if they see you, they kind of like scoot over to one side. So that's kind of how you drive. So just be aware of it, and definitely be vigilant, because you're probably not used to that wherever you're coming from. Also, a lot of times you'll see one-way streets, especially in these small towns. The road will just like all of a sudden go down and then turn into like all of a sudden there's like a one-way this way and a couple one-ways. Sometimes are hard to tell what the one-ways are. I made this mistake and went the wrong direction because I didn't see the sign that said solo. So solo that's the one-way sign, or only. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to the solo or the only one-way signs, and don't drive the wrong way down the street, because everybody will just be honking at you and you're like, dumb tourist. So don't do that.
Another thing to look for is to just watch out for other cars when you're driving. A lot of the locals drive pretty casually. They won't use their turn signals, and sometimes just kind of stop in the middle of the road. So just watch out for that, and also watch for the speed limit as well. That seems to be something that's maybe not followed as closely.
That's polite. What else?
Okay. So also in smaller towns, especially like where we were on the west side of the island in Rincon, there's not a lot of stop signs. So most people just kind of just stop and let people out, whether they're turning right or left. So just make sure you watch for that, because all of a sudden, you'll come up on a whole bunch of people stopped, and you just have to let them in.
Yeah, you'll be like, why? Why is everybody stopped? And it's because they're being polite.
Yeah.
Because there's no stop signs.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a definitely big one. You don't want to get in an accident rear-ending anybody, because that sucks. Now you have to explain that to your rental car company.
So let's talk about parking in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, so parking in Puerto Rico is, in a word, it's kind of a pain. Especially if you're in San Juan or Ponce, which are like the two biggest cities, it's really, really, really hard to find parking spaces because they're just old cities and they're not meant for cars. So you're not going to find the big lots that you're normally used to seeing in the States, at least not in the big cities. Now, we've seen a few of them like further out, and so like at a shopping mall or like a recent development, you might see them. But most of the places that you want to go are going to be like all the cool places, the touristy places aren't going to have a whole lot of parking. So it makes it a lot harder, especially on the weekends where you go to a beach or something like that. Sometimes they have like beach parking, like up in Luquillo or whatever. There's a big lot there, or even like Seven Seas Beach has got like a big lot. But because of like the kind of the current pandemic stuff, they just haven't had them open all the time. So you want to check on when might actually be open, because I think we found them only open like Thursdays through Sundays, really, but that even varied. So just be aware of that. Also, a lot of businesses are found like all over the place. You'll see like little stalls, food stalls on the side of the road, or even like just little businesses and just buildings just right on the side of a kind of a busy street. And we noticed a lot of people, because there's no parking there's no parking on the side, they would just literally pull up on the sidewalk, or they would pull completely off the road and then just park. And that's pretty common to be seen there. If you're going to do something like that, make sure you're completely off the road so that you're not blocking anything, so that you don't draw any attention to get a ticket for yourself. Okay, so here's a few like bonus tips that we promised, right? So the first one is, if you're going to book a rental car, it definitely pays to book in advance. And your best bet, the cheapest way you're going to do that, is generally going to be online. So when we booked ours, we booked it through Sixt, and we were able to get actually an extra, like I think 2% back, I think is what I got, by booking through a cash app, like a cashback app like Rakuten. So definitely recommend doing that if you're gonna do that. Or of course you can check with your credit card company. A lot of times they'll have like an extra like 30% discount code or something along those lines. But if you haven't used Rakuten, then I'll have a link in the description below if you want to try that. Okay, so secondarily, also check the hours of operation of your car rental company, because especially if you have like maybe a late flight or something, they might not be open when you want to return the car. And so you want to make sure you know how the proper procedure for that is, especially if it's off-site and it's not right there at the airport, because then that might mean that you might not have a shuttle available, so you might have to get an Uber or a taxi or something like that to get you over to the airport. So also, like I mentioned, not all of the rental car companies are going to be right at the airport itself. There are some that are off-site. Our rental car company, Sixt, was actually off-site. It was maybe like 1.5 miles off-site. So definitely consider that as well. And you want to find out ahead of time, because if you have to, it might add more time calling for a shuttle, because they might not have the shuttles running all the time. You may actually have to call them to let them know that you're there and ready to be picked up, and it might take some time for them to pick you up. So definitely look into that ahead of time as well. And then finally, again, this is kind of to rental car companies and kind of more timely right now. Right now, at least in the early part of 2021, because of social distancing and all of those other rules, it's going to take a lot longer for you to get through and get your actual rental car to get into the door and sign the papers and all that kind of stuff. For us, it took us, I think it was over an hour that we waited outside, like in a little tent, until we were ready to be called in, since they were only, I think, allowing like 2 people in there at a time.
So we hope this video was helpful for you, so you know how to get around Puerto Rico and also about renting a car in Puerto Rico as well. If you have any questions or comments, let us know.
That's right. And also, we have a couple of videos here. I don't know which corner, it'll be up in there. All about Puerto Rico. There's a playlist, as well as a video about how to travel safely to Puerto Rico, as well as another update to the more recent travel restrictions. Thank you guys for watching so much, and definitely like the video, share it with someone else you think that would benefit from this, and thanks for watching.
And happy wandering.
Bye. You can follow our story on our blog and by subscribing to our channel and our socials. Thanks for watching. All right, now we can eat.
I'm hungry.
We got this in right before we lost all of our light, so...